Howdy everyone, this is Sean with Tap Performance. Today I'm going to be going through the installation process for our new Folsom Prison Series handlebars for 2015 to 2022 road glides. So before I get into the install, I'll tell you a little bit about them. They're 1.5 inches diameter. They'll fit 2015 to 2022 road glides. We also have a 14 and 16 inch option. No matter what height you go with, they all have a 35.25 inch width, and they all have a 5-inch pullback. The 12-inch option can reuse the stock clutch and brake lines along with the switch housing wires. If you want to go with our taller 14 or 16-inch options, you'll have to get some extensions. So I recommend you check out our website to find exactly what your specific bike needs. We have a fitment guide on there, and I'll put that link below. I'll point some other stuff out along the way, but let's get to the install. Before you get started with this, it's a good idea to get your tank protected somehow. If you don't have the specific tank cover, you can always use a towel or a blanket, or something like that, just to make sure that nothing falls in your tank and chips any paint off of it. The first step, we're going to remove our instrument bezel. To do that, we have 2 screws, one on each side, and then there is a little decorative ignition switch cover right here. Ours is already off, but what you have to do is just turn your ignition to the left, take a small screwdriver, and then just pry up on it, and that'll kind of work itself out. Once you get that off, then you can back out these 2 screws. And you should just be able to pull this right off. And then there's some switches on the back that we need to disconnect. There's our instrument connector right here. Just take a small screwdriver. You just want to pry up the flaps. Pull that one out. And then we have 2 accessory switches. You're just going to push down on the tabs, back both of those out. This right hand side can be kind of tricky. The tab is on the inside, so it's hard to get your finger in between the bezel and the switch. If you can't get it, it's just back out the bolts holding in that accessory switch plug. Both T25s. Now we can disconnect our switch connections. This right hand side is for our right hand switches. Back that out. You're just pushing on that little tab and then backing it out as you push down. This middle one is for our run start switch. Same thing. This left hand one is for our left switches. There's one more in here we want to disconnect. It's our twist grip sensor. It's held in place with a zip tie. You may need a small screwdriver to get this one disconnected, but you're just pushing on that little tab and pulling out as you do so. Next, we're going to remove our front brake assembly along with our hydraulic clutch assembly. And this is going to be the same process on both sides. So we'll have 2 bolts here holding this assembly together, 2 bolts over here. Those 2 bolts are a T27, just back both of those out, and then have a safe place to put these. You can just let them hang. You can get a bungee cord to hang them. I'm just gonna rest them right here on our tank cover. All right, last step to getting the handlebars off. We just have the 4 clamp bolts. That's a 1/4 inch Allen. Be sure you're holding on to the bars, because once these break loose, the bars will fall. Okay, now we can start to remove the wires from the bars. We have to take our switch housings apart, because there's 2 bolts on the back side of the left and right. That's a T25. The only other thing you have to remove would be our trip cycle right here. And it can be kind of scary to take this off because it feels like it's pretty delicate. You might break it, but all you have to do is lift up on it, and then you're gonna be lifting up on the tab as you're pushing out towards the end of the grip. So up and out, and it slips right off. finish removing the switch housing, you just have to pry up on the little lock right there. It'll pop open. Same on the other side. All right, now we can remove our throttle, and then we can just start pulling the wires back through the bar. I'm gonna start with the left-hand side. You just start to gently pull on the wires, and it does help to kind of push as you're pulling. It's pretty simple to get it out of the stock bar because the bends are not very severe. Same thing over here. On this side, you have the switch housing wire along with our twist grip sensor. So you kind of have to pull those out at the same time. One thing I want to point out is you can actually reuse your stock grips if you want to. The right one will just slip right off. The left one, however, is glued to the handlebar, so you typically end up destroying the grip before you can get it all the way off. However, it can be done. It just takes a little bit of doing and a little bit of patience. We are not going to be reusing the stock grips. We're going to be installing the Avon air cushion grips. They're much cooler, much more comfortable, just like my shirt. If you guys want to get yourself one, I'll include a link to our website down below. Okay, now we can start the rewiring process. It's a pretty simple process as long as you follow these next couple steps. We have to get the wires through the bar, so all we're going to do is take the supplied braided sleeve along with some string, and then we're going to pull the wires through the bar. So the first thing we need to do is get our string fed through the bar. If you have compressed air, you can just get the string started up in the slot right here, and then just use the compressed air to blast the string through. If you don't have compressed air, you can tie a little nut around the string towards the bottom and then just start the nut through and then feed it through, and then you can let the weight of the nut along with gravity pull the string through. So I'll show what both of those will look like here. First I'll start with the nut on the string weight. You don't have compressed air, so again just feeding that nut through. Just get it in as far as it'll go. And then you're just going to kind of maneuver the bar so that the weight of the nut will pull the string through. If you do have compressed air, same start. You can use a nut or just tie a little knot around the end of the string, that just so the compressed air has something to grab to pull the string through, but just starting it in a little slot, just how we did. There you have it, just like that, and we'll move on. Next, we're going to tape the braided sleeve to the string, and then we'll pull this sleeve through, and then we'll pull the wires through with our braided sleeve. And I'm just using masking tape. You can use electrical tape, but just one thing you want to be careful of is to not let any of the edges of the tape roll over while you're wrapping it around, because they can get caught as you're pulling it through. So just use some type of tape it to the braided sleeve, and just start pulling it through, just like that. As a bonus, I'll show a third method, and it's probably the easiest and the quickest way. We're just going to cut out the string part and let gravity and the weight of a 1/4-inch drive socket pull our braided sleeve through. So similar kind of deal, we're just cutting out a step. So I'll show what that looks like here. So here's the 1/4-inch drive socket. I have an 11/32, and I want it to be as big as I can, just to give myself some weight to pull it through, but also small enough to be able to fit through the inside of the bar. So I'm just gonna take the sleeve, push it through the bottom of the socket, and then I'll tape this end up just so the socket doesn't slip off the end as we're pulling it through. All right, then we're gonna put the socket into the notch, then use the sleeve to push it over to our first bend. And then the weight of the socket will pull it over the bend. We just keep pushing the sleeve down through the tube. And then it'll likely get caught up on that little lip right there. There's a reduction between the riser of the bar and the clamping bar. So it's a smaller diameter, so there's a little lip. So if you don't clear it right away, all I like to do is push some slack in there, flip the bars upside down to get it over the lip. And then shake it through, and there it is. All right, now we can start feeding our wires through. We'll start with the right hand or throttle side. This side has 2 wiring harnesses that we need to feed through. We have our twist grip sensor along with our switch wires. One thing to note, there is a difference between the left and the right. The right hand side has 2 of them, one of them being the start stop switch connector. So what we're gonna do is just start with the twist grip sensor, feed it through the end of the bar, and then pull it down through the notch there. And then what we're gonna do is just insert the connectors into our braided sleeve. And we're gonna kind of stack these on top of each other to make it as skinny as possible, just to make it pulling through the wire or through the bars just a little bit easier. And you want to get the throttle about 1 foot into the sleeve. Once you get the throttle in there, then we can take our switch wires, do the same thing, get them stacked on top of each other, and just insert them into the sleeve. All right, and the reason why we want a little bit of space in between the twist grip sensor connector and our switch harness connector is because the twist grip is quite a bit longer than our switch harness. If you have them stacked right on top of each other, what happens is you'll pull it through and they'll come out at the same time, and our switches will be pretty much right where they'll need to be, but you'll still have about 1 foot of the twist grip to pull through. And it's kind of hard to pull through when this wire or the harness is already in place. So you just want to kind of get this spread out to the point where these seat at the same time as you're pulling them through. So the 2 main benefits of this braided sleeve: 1, it's going to protect the terminals as you're pulling it through. 2, it's going to help round out some of those hard edges on the terminals. So that way when you're pulling around some of these sharp bends, it's just going to make it a lot easier. So what I'm going to do is just tape the sleeve to the wires just so it doesn't slip off as I'm pulling it through, and then we'll start feeding them. And what it is, it's pull down here as you're pushing the wires through, and you just kind of go back and forth and just kind of shimmy it through. Okay, here I am at the bottom. I got the wires pulled through. There is a little bit of slack here, so I'm gonna remove this braided sleeve, finish pulling the throttle through. One thing to note as you're finishing up the throttle, there's a little O-ring here at the bottom, so you just want to make sure that's still in place as you're finishing this up. With the right side all done, you can just move on to the left. This side should be a little bit easier. Okay, so now we'll get the switch housings and the grips back on. We'll just start with the right hand side. So you'll notice once you get the bars off that this end of the grip is the only thing that twists, and there's grooves on that twist grip. So those just slide into the grooves in the grip, so you want to make sure that this is fully seated. And that way it'll grab, because if you have it just a little bit off, you'll miss the groove. So you just want to make sure that's all the way on there. And then we'll get our switches, get that clip back on there. All right, now we'll get the housings back on the buttons. There's the front and the back, just sandwich the buttons. They also sandwich the grips, so you want to make sure that the grip is on the inside of the housing before you get it tightened down. And we'll just get these loosely started. One thing I do want to point out while I'm here is you want to make sure that the grip is on far enough to the handlebar to where it's engaging the twist grip. But you also want to make sure that your switch housing isn't pulling on the grip at all, because again, the grip sits inside the housing, and if it's pulling on the grip, what can happen is your grip gets caught, you get caught up on the switch housing, and it causes the grip to kind of lag and not go back all the way. So you just want to make sure that you have the grip far enough on, but also have the housing to where it's not rubbing on the grip. Okay, similar kind of deal on the left-hand side. The grip is actually notched. One half is a little bit smaller than the other half. So it actually kind of go on there like that. And then you know you don't have it right if once you go put the housings on, they don't mesh all the way. And all right, these are ready to go back on the bike. All right, there's an alignment dowel on road glides. So all you're gonna do is line up that alignment dowel with the slot in our bar, and that is a slot, so you get plenty of adjustability. And this will just kind of help you get it centered in the clamp. All right, now we're just gonna take the top jaw of the clamp, put it back on, just get it loosely started for now. Now we're gonna get our wires reconnected. You don't have to do this step, but one thing I do like to do just to give the wires a little bit of play and wiggle room is just to remove the female terminal from this little plastic housing here. And to do that, there's just two little tabs on each side of the terminals. So you just squeeze them together and then push it out. And these are all just connected to this little plastic flap that just comes pulled down and pull it out. Just squeeze these flaps together on all of them. Just put the flap back into its grooves. Now you have a little bit more play with those wires. Start with the right side. Here's for our switches. Here's for our run stop switch. Here's the left side. And then we have our twist grip sensor. And this one plugs into that clip that's clipped to this flap there in the back. All right, now I'm just gonna get a feel for where I want bars at, wherever it's comfortable for me. Again, you do have quite a bit of play wherever you want them. You know, way forward, way backward. That's good for me. Once you get those screws tightened down, what you'll want to do from there is tighten the upper ones until the top and bottom clamp meet. And then from there, you'll tighten each one 16 to 20 foot-pounds. All right, now we're gonna get our clutch and brake reinstalled. So we'll start with front brake. So you'll know you'll kind of have this lined up right when it's right up against the housing and right up against that ridge. And then we do have the hole drilled out for the alignment dowel inside of the front part of the clamp. This one's been ground off, but this will just allow you to be able to reinstall this without having to grind that off. So it just makes the install a little bit easier. And you can see it is plenty big to where you get plenty of adjustment out of it. All right, now we'll get our instrument bezel reinstalled. I'll start with the accessory switches that I unscrewed, so I'll just get that screwed back in. If you were able to unplug it, you just plug it back in. The one for our gauges. Reinstall the screws for our gauge cover. One last thing as an option, if you want to, is when you put on a taller bar, sometimes the mirrors can get kind of high or a little bit too high. So what you can do is actually pull it off and flip them and then run it underneath the bar. So you take the right off and then put it on the bottom side of the left, and then take the left off and put it on the bottom side of the right. You don't need to do that, but if you do find that the mirrors are just a little bit too high, it is a good option to be able to see behind you a little bit better. The last step for everyone is going to be to reinstall that decorative ignition switch cover. Again, if you have our 12-inch bar, you won't need any wire or brake or clutch extensions. If you want to do one of our taller options, 14 or 16, be sure to double check our website because we have a part number and fitment guide there for your specific year and model. Again, if you like my shirt, be sure to check out the website because they're available there. We're on Facebook and Instagram, so check us out because we have live action shots of all of our products, handlebars, mufflers, headers, everything. But if you guys have any questions, be sure to shoot them down below. But that's all for now.